2020. Bob, how are you, sir? You're a run around. Where are you today? What's happening?
I'm a problem. I'm obviously a show liability at this point. We got a game in Joliet this morning. I'm driving down there, but I had to be here for this podcast because this is going to be a good one.
Well, in fairness, you've always been a liability. We're just now revealing itself. That's a difference than becoming a liability. You've always been a liability.
We held it together for 33 episodes now, though.
This is true. So we have a great guest today. Chelsea Brooke-Ladd is here. She's the founder of Dugout Dish, baseball writer. She writes for Pitcher List and Prospects Live. Did you just cut out and come back in? How are you, Chelsea?
I'm good.
Couldn't bear your intro. Oh no, I think she's frozen right off the bat. Chelsea, are you with us? I think I'm solo for this moment, just flying by myself. But if you're here,
I'm here with you.
Chelsea, I think you went dark. Do you want to introduce yourself again? I think your Wi-Fi. You have Kentucky Wi-Fi, so we all understand.
What's happening? I am Chelsea Ladd. Which will be a year old next month, so I'm super excited about that. I work for Region 1 Sports here locally in Paducah, Kentucky. We cover local high school sports in our region on the radio, and I write for them. I also write for Pitcher List and Prospects Live, where I cover indie ball. So I am pretty much all over the place right now.
All over the interweb. So your first piece for Pitcher List is coming out sometime, which is on sort of this whole negotiation stuff. So fill us in a little bit about that. So you're the expert in the room, which is great because Bobby and I are always doing like very half-assed research so we can talk about it. We're like, yeah, they negotiated something new this weekend. And what was it again, Bob? And that's kind of our shtick.
Yeah, we're not good at this.
So please, we have an expert here. Tell us what's happening.
Well, I had to explain it to my mom the other day because she wasn't getting it. She was, but she wasn't. And so I told her, I was like, it's basically the league said, hey, we're going to give you a bag of grapefruit. And so the union was like, okay, well, maybe, yeah, we'll sign that. We'll do that. And then they come back and they're like, well, what if we only give, certain guys a whole bag of grapefruit and another group only one grapefruit? So of course they come back and say no, and so on. They come back and the league's like, well, what about an orange instead? Of course they're like, no, we're not doing that. That's not what we agreed on. And as time continues, the league's like, well, what about a kumquat? It's still citrus, how about that?
Have you ever eaten those, by the way?
I have not.
I got them at Trader Joe's once. So they're like the size of grapes and they're like a whole citrus fruit. And you just eat the whole thing, including the skin, like the oily, citrusy, like gross tasting. So they have this weird, they're kind of bitter and it tastes like you're eating a lot of orange peel. So they're not great. Don't recommend kumquats that well. All right. Sorry. Continue.
Yeah. See, perfect example. I'm glad I used that.
Yeah.
Essentially, it's been going on since March, the March agreement, and they had come up with the Grapefruit and Cactus League, which could have already been in play, could have been working, could have been wonderful. We could have already had baseball. And then when they kind of tossed that out, they were like, well, maybe a 3 division. And that could have been also interesting. The Houston Astros and the Los Angeles Dodgers would have been playing against each other, so for sure. And they continued on. They sent a formal proposal to the union on May 20th. The union rejected it on May 26th, and 6,000 proposals later, what it feels like, we are nowhere.
Well, it seems like some stuff has happened in the last couple of days. It seems like we're closer. I mean, what's the latest right now?
Well, the latest right now is, of course, Tony Clark and Manfred met. And once they left, they completely both forgot what they had agreed on, from what it seems. Some of the players are unhappy with the situation. A lot of the owners actually, well, not a lot, but maybe like 6 owners have been reported that they don't even want to play this year because they would make more money not playing this year. So it's about 50-50 on my confidence scale that we see it. I think that right now it's a tactic. Of course, the owners want as a minimum amount of games as they possibly can get. So I think they're going to continue to delay this as long as they can so they can get the amount they want. Of course, the players, they want 70 games. The union wants about 650 to 60, which is interesting because the league actually come back and said in one of the proposals before they wanted 72. So it's just it's an ongoing situation. It's very aggravating. I know a lot of people diehard fans are ready to jump ship this year just because of the whole situation. But I feel like if the season doesn't happen, Major League Baseball will have major ramifications for years to come. And of course, the CBA is coming. So if we don't have just a little sliver of baseball this year, we could definitely, miss out in the future.
Well, let's talk about so people are jumping ship. What does that even mean? Like they're gonna go watch volleyball instead? Like
a lot of people, are like, I'm a diehard fan, but this has done me in. And, I thought 94 would do me in, but this is it. This is the one. And it's like, okay, you say
I appreciate that the person you were pantomiming just then had an even stronger Kentucky accent. So that was good. That was excellent. Well, yeah, I hear that sentiment, but it's not like you're going to jump ship to the KBO. Like, did you watching that? Baseball is super boring. Like, who cares? Right? I mean, it's baseball, but you just don't really care.
I've watched one KBO game. I stayed up for it, and I had plans to cover KBO on Dugout Dish. It's not happened because when the games are starting, that's around the time I'm actually finally falling asleep. So
I
haven't been able to.
Aren't those games at like 5:30 in the morning?
Yes.
Well, because they're
what's going on in Kentucky at 5:30
they're probably
in the morning?
10 hours early ahead of us.
Yeah. Me binge watching The Simpsons. That's what's happening at 5 in the morning.
Well, that's good. That's good insomnia taste, though. Good for you. The Simpsons are still just superb. Question for you from a writing perspective. Do you feel like you do your best work in the morning or late at night?
I probably morning, mid-afternoon, maybe.
Really?
At night, I'm like, I'll just push it off until the morning because if I post it that night, I feel like nobody's going to actually, take the time to read it. And if I post it in the morning or afternoon, it's a better chance of people actually being like, hey, I want to read this.
Yeah, that's fair. I personally, I do terrible like creative work in the middle of the day. Just terrible. Too much sun. It's like, hey, Dan, your brain should do something fun. When it's nighttime, that's when I do my best work. Just it's open-ended. I could write till 3 a.m. if I wanted to.
Like you're like an owl, Dan.
No, I just in the morning I have stuff I need to get done. In the middle of the day, my brain just doesn't want to do that kind of work. And then at night, it's like, all right, everything else is done. You can write until you don't want to write anymore, and then you can just sleep later tomorrow if you want. That seems to be like where I can hit my stride a little better. There's some exceptions, but I think everyone's different. That's why I ask. It's a curious phenomenon.
I think at night, that's when I do all my research, like especially for swinging into history. I'll get lost on the internet learning about like old baseball players that I've always been fascinated by, and then I wake up and I'm like, oh wait, I want to do swinging into history on someone else this week. Yeah, that's what happens to me.
Gotcha.
Never does.
Yeah. So for those of you listening, we're here with Chelsea Ladd. She's the founder of dugoutdish.com. She's a baseball writer and is working on her first piece for Pitcher List coming up soon and covers indie ball for Prospects Live. Bobby is with us. So I'm actually looking at the feed. Without your video showing, Bob, it doesn't actually show your box, which I feel like you probably figured that out because you did this 2 weeks ago. You did this 2 weeks ago. But Bobby is here with us in spirit. He's just about to coach a youth baseball game. So he's running around being very unsafe looking at so your car got broken into a second time, huh?
A second time. Now you're only going to see like the top of my head because
don't crash your car.
Yeah, a second time in less than a month. I mean,
Oh my
Chicago is just a hotbed of crime at this point.
Oh.
Well, you also left thousands of dollars in your Jeep, so questionable decisions.
That was by circumstance. That was.
Yeah, the circumstance was you left a lot of money in your Jeep.
I know, but
that's the circumstance behind being robbed.
Oh.
The second time, they stole like $6 and change, like all my quarters. How's a guy supposed to do laundry?
You're married. That doesn't. We know that you're not doing laundry. You're not capable of doing laundry.
Yes, I do. That's like one of my things. My wife will tell you that I do my own laundry. Very particular about what happens with the linens.
Yeah, that makes sense. So I want to go into what you were just talking about, Chelsea. So old baseball players. There's been one of these Twitter threads running around. It seems like every other week where people want to have this what I think is a very stupid argument about could old players hit today's players? Where do you fall on this? Was Babe Ruth a hack by today's standards?
I think they could hang. I think they could hang with the guys of today.
What do you base this on?
I base this on stats that I've looked at an insane amount while swinging into history. And I would definitely pair Rogers Hornsby up against DeGrom. I would love to see that. I think he could hang. I think he could.
Well, I think the couple of things we know about velocity are interesting. So my dad wrote a book on pitching. It's called The Science of the Fastball. Mm-hmm. And the main sort of storyline in the book, and it's a nonfiction book, but he follows three pitchers, the three essentially fastest, hardest throwers of all time, which are Nolan Ryan, Bob Feller, and this guy, Stephen Dalkowski, who is unknown. Are you aware of Stephen Dalkowski, who he was?
I'm not familiar.
So, yeah, and most people aren't so it's really fascinating. And for those of you out there, my dad's book is really great. It's really under the radar, but it's a really great book. If you're interested in pitching, you should pick it up. But so Stephen Dalkowski was an Orioles minor leaguer in, I think, the late 80s. And so have you ever heard of the umpire Doug Harvey? He has his own book called Call Me. I think it's Call Me God or something like that. But he was well-known, umpired every World Series for so long. He was a long tenured umpire. So Doug Harvey was umpiring through much of Nolan Ryan's career, and this guy, Steve Dalkowski. So one of the stories about Steve when he was in high school was that his sister said that she always knew when Steve was pitching because she could hear his ball hissing from the parking lot, from a ways off. And his stat lines were consistently something like this: 20 strikeouts, 20 walks, 25 strikeouts, 25 walks, stuff like that. He gets signed by the Orioles, and he just was reported by essentially everyone who ever saw him, including this umpire, Doug Harvey, who was quoted as, I umpired Nolan Ryan's games many times. Stephen Dalkowski threw significantly harder than Nolan Ryan. Not even, he's it wasn't even comparable. There was no question Dalkowski threw significantly harder than Nolan Ryan. So the rumors on Dalkowski were that he threw about 110. And he was just one of these humans where he was perfectly in tune and in time with his body and elastic and just like a rubber band to throw just absolute missiles, but he never had any command. And then he blew his arm out in the minor leagues. That's why no one really knows of him. But the eyewitness accounts are consistent that he just threw absolute flames, had no idea where it was going, and would throw like a no-hitter and walk 18 batters.
That's like nuts.
It's a good research topic.
Yeah.
By the way, but it is a really fascinating story. And then of course Nolan Ryan, when they were just doing their first radar guns, they had these lasers. So the laser radar gun would actually intersect with home plate, and so it would only pick up ball speed at home plate. And Nolan Ryan was clocked on that at like 100 or 101 in his prime, which at the plate, the ball typically loses 6 to 8 miles per hour on its journey to home plate. So today's velocities are read right at the fingertips. Mm-hmm. So if you're read at 100 crossing the plate, it's going to be like 107 or between 106 and 108 out of your hand. So that's how hard Nolan Ryan probably threw in his younger days, up to probably 106 or 107 or 108. And Dalkowski threw significantly harder than him, quote unquote.
I can imagine even stepping up to the plate for that. Like,
no one really can. It's terrifying. And then so Bob Feller was the equivalent, and he was throwing that hard back in the, I can't remember Bob. What's Bob Feller's day? Was it the 70s or 60s or 50s?
60s. Yeah.
He was clocked through that. He threw through a ballistics testing machine. So, like they shoot a bullet. I can't remember what it's like, a chronograph or something, but a bullet goes through two essentially like panes, and it times it going through the two panes. Imagine throwing through a window frame. And he was clocked at like 101 or something from 60 feet away. Also, this was back in the 50s. But I think we know. I mean, have you watched any of these retro games recently? Like they put on Periscope.
Yes, I love those. Like I eat those up, honestly.
But you can tell a lot of those guys are legitimately throwing slow though, right? I mean, you can tell. Yeah. I was watching a Cardinals someone else World Series game, and it was abundantly clear the starting pitcher was throwing 85, like at best. Like he was probably 84 to 86, which is fine. But so there's a legitimate, I think, argument just about the physicality on the whole. Yeah. So obviously Bob Feller and some of those guys were the outliers. Like Bob Feller threw absolute flames back in the 50s, 60s. But most pitchers probably threw 85 at their best. And there were certainly exceptions. But so do you think like they could have handled just seeing 94 to 99 consistently?
I want to say they could. I don't know how great it would be. It would probably look like me at the plate, and that's not a great track record ever. But I would have loved to be able to just see that in some weird way, because I don't know if they would be able to catch up to it, but I think they could at least, go down trying.
Well, I think one of the reasons I don't like this argument is because you've seen some of the softball versus baseball guys. You've seen some of that, I assume, like Jenny Finch or any of these like really good fast pitch players pitching against either major leaguers or college guys and just like punching them out, no problem. Part of that is because baseball players are trained to see this release point, the high one, right? They've never seen the underhand release point. And obviously in fast pitch, other fast pitch players hit fast pitch, right? Like the female players hit it. So it's not like the baseball guys, because they're males, can't hit it. They're just not adapted to the release point. And when they get adapted, they start to catch up.
My high school team actually played against our high school baseball team. Greatest reaction ever was seeing all these guys that I grew up with saying, "Oh, you can't play ball. You're a girl. You can't do this. This is just like, oh, with your hand." And like none of them could hit me. And it was the greatest thing one of the greatest things I've ever done.
You just punched them out, huh?
Oh, it was amazing. But I actually got to meet Jenny Finch last year, so.
She's like 11 feet tall, isn't she? Is she a real person?
I did not expect her to be as tall as she is. Like, she was
She's tall.
I'm 5'2", so I'm standing beside her in this picture, and it's on my Instagram. It's like, I always compare us as Danny DeVito and Arnold Schwarzenegger in Twins.
She's tall. She's like a super athlete.
Girls, one of the MPF girls this past winter, I just stepped in. She was throwing batting practice, and it was, I definitely fouled off 90% of them. Just not, that's not to say that like that was successful. I just, the trajectory of the ball, like it's just not the same. So I was just consistently underneath every single one. and she was throwing hard, and she wasn't trying to, full blast. She was just normal batting practice. I just couldn't square it up. And if I did, it was to right field. It's just totally different when you're batting against someone that's like a polished softball pitcher.
Oh
Yeah, for sure. And so I think that's part of the, like, yeah, if you name a major, Andrew Miller up against Rogers Hornsby, he's got no adaptation period. But if they like play together or something for a year, Rogers Hornsby was the same like human. He had the same eyeballs as like a person has today. It's not like humans have really evolved. It's just like training has evolved, right?
Oh yeah.
So I think they would adapt for sure. It would just take some time.
Give them a little bit. They'll be good to go.
But as a person who appreciates baseball history, do you think it's even relevant? Like, for example, Jesse Owens, right? Like the greatest athlete alive in his era, winning Olympic gold medals. And I think his 100-meter time back then, which was the best on the planet, was like a 10.7. Today, that doesn't even get you 80th place probably in the men's.
That doesn't even get
Olympics.
you a gold star.
No, you don't even get a participation medal in today's self-esteem society. So is it relevant that you could say, oh, like Jesse Owens couldn't even hang today? Like I don't think that's a relevant thing to say at all. When you're the best person on the planet, given the training conditions and back in your day, and that's still the same thing with baseball. Do you agree or disagree with that?
No, I agree. I feel like especially with baseball players, like from back then, the greats, like you can't compare them to now because training, like you said, is completely different. Diet is completely different. I mean, you look at a lot of baseball players from the 1800s until the 1950s, like they were not in great shape. They were doing everything possible to not be in great shape. Like,
give us an example. Give us a story from your research.
Well, I believe it was Rogers Hornsby.
Oh no. Chelsea, if you're out there, you're breaking up. You have to start over. I caught none of that. It's okay. The iTunes version will have this stuff snipped out, but these are the hazards of doing these podcasts live.
Rogers Hornsby. I believe it's Rogers Hornsby.
And Rogers Hornsby was the one who had the quote about every year I just stare out the window and wait for baseball season, right?
Yeah, which is relatable. He actually took pride in his diet. He actually, he didn't drink. He didn't do the things that the guys of his time did. A lot of baseball players back then were looked at as womanizers. They gambled, they drank, they smoked. Some of them smoked in the dugout during the game. Like, of course, yesterday with Christy Mathewson, he kind of...
Little of that's changed, by the way. Bob, are you listening to that the same way? Nothing's changed.
Honestly, sounds like a paradise.
Right. So Christy Mathewson, with the one from yesterday that I wrote, he actually kind of changed the way a lot of society looked at baseball players during his time, which was from 1900 to 1916, because he was a devout Christian. He wouldn't pitch on Sundays. He didn't participate in a lot of what his teammates were doing. A journalist actually went to him to uncover the 1919 Black Sox because he had published books, and of course he had an inside to all of that. So he was definitely not the usual baseball player back then. And I think nowadays, of course, people take more pride in their bodies. They take more pride in being the best. And it's not just like, I'm going to, go gamble and smoke and drink during this game and, jump in the stands and punch somebody that's heckling me. So I think they're a different breed back then. So they're the greats of their time, but you can't really compare them to the greats of today, in my opinion.
No, I agree with you. Bobby, where do you fall on this issue?
I think that their physical like prowess is understated a little bit. Like I'm sure that the diets and training regimen was a little different, but these are also guys that went back home to work in the off season.
It's a good point.
Oh yeah.
You get points. I'm adding points to your total today.
Thank you. But you got guys that are physically strong. I mean, I've got, just for comparison's sake, like my dad personally is probably one of the most physically strong people I've been around, and I'm not sure he's been in a weight room more than 10 days in his whole life. Just from the work he does, like you shake his hand and it'll break your hand if you're not ready for like a handshake like that. And you do, like I've done physical labor, I do a lot of concrete work with him, and it's like stamina wise and like just physical brute strength wise. I mean, he's 60 years old and I'm 33, and he moves around heavy things with the same ease that I do currently, and I still work out in the weight room. And so I think it's just a little understated on how strong physically some of these guys probably were.
Oh yeah.
Without having, I guess, modern day training techniques.
Yeah. Well, and you hear this, that's what's interesting about some of the outliers. Like Mickey Mantle, like the power that people describe that Mickey Mantle had is like insane. Like him hitting balls out of ballparks back then. You're like, how is that possible for some old dude? You know, when you're just eating.
And you're talking about that had like inferior equipment. I mean, we watched batting practice.
Inferior everything, and he's hitting balls out with a 39-inch bat out of the ballpark. So like a ball made of like yarn, probably.
Like Josh Gibson.
That was the dumbest thing I've ever said. Baseballs are made out of yarn. I meant to say something like, "Hey, you know, like who knows what?" Baseballs were probably soft and weird and lumpy back then too, and Mickey Mantle was just pounding them out of the ballpark into the bay. Did
you watch the McGuire Sosa recap, that ESPN documentary? Did either one of you watch that Sunday?
Yeah.
So I just remember that home run derby where Sosa's putting balls like 5-10 off the scoreboard and left field, and there's stories of Mickey Mantle, and there's markings of where his home runs hit.
Doing the same thing so long ago. It's crazy.
It's insane. That power is translatable across generations, right? Like the flight of the ball, even if the ball was inferior and the bat was made out of a shoe.
That was like Josh Gibson of the Negro Leagues. Like he actually was hitting balls. It's rumored that he hit balls out of old Yankee Stadium. Like the amount of power that some of these guys had with what they had is insane to think about. Yeah.
Well, and that's the thing when people, and Bobby and I have worked with a lot of young players in general, just kids that, you know, we worked with over the years, and some of them just walk off the street and their body knows how to produce power.
Yeah. And
back to this whole idea, which is Bobby's overarching point of like this country strength that literally everyone had back then because they're working manual labor. Can you imagine like swinging an axe all day, every day as a kid? You know, like maybe Josh Gibson did, or maybe Mickey Mantle did. How well prepared that would make you to hit a baseball swinging an axe and like literally cutting down trees all day.
No wonder the score was 1917 and, you know, the 1920s. They were all hitting bombs. Like it was a nothing to them.
Yeah, it's a really interesting thing just to think about the differences in the game today. It just seems like muscles, like Bobby said, the old man strength that like never seems to leave you. Which, Bobby, have you gotten more of that as you've gotten older? Have you noticed your old man strength increasing?
Well, I was just talking about this. I was with one of my buddies who I had seen in probably like 6 months. He's like, "Oh, you're like, I look thinner," but then I was in the weight room and I'm probably as strong as I've ever been.
Well, it's because you've always been weak, so it's a low bar. It's a low bar to, you know, stay above.
This is what I deal with daily. This is a daily thing from Dan. He hates. I potentially may overshadow him here. No, but you're right. Like I don't know. I necessarily like notice it day to day, but if I'm doing something where I remember, you know, I used to bench press X amount of weight, if I can still do it without bench pressing in, you know, 3 to 4 months. Like that. I don't know if there's science or anything behind it, but I can definitely, like, it's an odd phenomenon, I guess, that you can still be that strong without looking out as I get older.
Yeah. Chelsea, how's your old man strength?
Well, as someone who's worked in the healthcare field, I've nothing like it. Yeah, it's terrifying.
There does seem to be some legitimate, like I noticed the same thing too. So when I retired in 2017, I didn't want to smell a weight again. It was like a bad breakup. But since then, I can still do, like, I can just pick up a barbell that's pretty heavy. Whereas it just seems like there's an accumulated like density that your muscles get over time. Like you just don't really lose it as fast. And I was doing a lot of like the little gym stuff, like cleaning up after kids, picking up weights and doing all, and that seemed like just enough to keep what you had going.
Yeah.
And which is like the same thing with that manual labor stuff. You're just pushing around heavy things, carrying things around the work site. There's definitely some legitimacy to that. But I noticed the same thing, Bobby, that I could just like go back in the weight room, and it's like my strength hasn't leached out quite as fast as I thought it would. So Chelsea, let's transition. You have a passion for indie ball. Bob and I are both, I'm a lifetime indie ball person. Bobby was a half and half after being drafted and then let go by the Orioles. What are your thoughts on indie ball? How can it help the world right now?
Well, it's actually going to be played next month. So I'm excited about that because the American Association, their hashtag is actually for love of the game. Their motto this season is we're just going to go out and play. We're going to get
good marketing. It's good branding. Right? I like that.
Right. I was really impressed by that. And of course, I know the Atlantic League and the Frontier League, they're still working on some things, trying to figure out where to go next. But I think with indie ball, a lot of people have this misconstrued opinion on it. You guys are insanely talented, like, and I think it could help grow the younger generation. Of course, in Major League Baseball, kids can go down there, get autographs, but you guys know, indie ball, it's easier for the kids to actually have conversations with the players. It's better. They actually get a chance to be a part of it. Whereas with Major League Baseball, I feel like it's an older generation that watches the game religiously. Everyone says baseball is dying, but to me, indie ball, which is going to be growing in the near future with everything going on with minor league baseball, I feel like it actually has a chance to grow the game, to develop more fans, more people who love baseball. And I, of course, grew up around indie ball. The first game I ever went to was an Evansville Otters game when I was like 11. And so ultimately, I feel like people need to back indie ball even more. And with a lot of people saying they're going to jump ship with Major League, I'm like, well, have you learned about indie ball? Here is my piece about every league. Find one in your area. Like, I've actually told someone that, and they're like, what's indie ball? Like, are we even friends?
Well, people still don't know it, and it's very regional, right? So like in the Midwest, you're much more likely to understand what indie ball is. If you're on the East Coast, you're really busy with your tech job, so you don't really care as much. People are busier. There's obviously a big cluster. The Atlantic League is up in the Northeast, but the Atlantic League is a lot less like indie ball than other indie ball. The Atlantic League is like a wholly different animal. It feels a lot different than the Frontier League, and it's a lot less kind of grassrootsy, I would say, just because it's a bigger production. I mean, the Atlantic League games, they get 5,000 fans at games a lot. And not that not getting fans is part of indie ball, because it isn't. Like Southern Maryland or Southern Illinois, where I think they're one of your teams as well. I've seen a bunch of those photos in your writing. They have a great stadium. They have a great production. It's a fun atmosphere, and it's a very legit ballpark, and they get a good amount of fans. I mean, that's a very legit place to play. Because I think they built that ballpark thinking they were going to get a AA charter, was my understanding.
Yeah, I think so.
So it's like a AA ballpark, yeah.
And they even have mini golf now.
Oh, do they?
Yeah, behind the bullpen. Like,
Oh man, I want to go back and pitch there and do that when I'm not pitching. That's just like a great way to get maybe in trouble and maybe released, but maybe a
and
story.
they also have a moonshine stand and a Buffalo Wild Wings stand now.
That's a cool thing that's happened. So I don't want to lose this indie ball train, but ballpark food has really evolved. And you've probably seen this firsthand because I haven't attended as many games because Bobby and I were still playing up until a couple of years ago. But how have you seen ballpark food evolve? Because it seems like it's a lot different now.
Oh my gosh, like it went from, Cracker Jacks, pretzels, and nachos and hamburgers to like now at Busch Stadium, you can get like Chinese food.
Which is amazing. That
right?
makes me so happy. I would love to have
a vegetarian menu.
No way. Chinese food at a ballpark.
Yes, eat General Tso's chicken out of a upside down helmet. That sounds amazing.
Oh God.
Or a big helmet filled with ramen.
Soup.
A big helmet filled with ramen, and then you could just keep the soup and then try to catch a foul ball in it and it splashes everybody with ramen.
Who's eating pasta at a baseball game? You got hot dog, nachos.
Did you just call ramen pasta?
You did.
What is it? I don't know.
What is wrong with you? You don't know what ramen is? Were you an American child at any point?
It's noodles. What is it?
Oh my God. How do you not know what ramen is?
I know what it is.
What are
how do
you?
you describe it?
You're about to bring a child into this world and you don't know what ramen is?
First of all, are you still eating ramen?
Yeah, I actually really like ramen. Ramen's a great food. It's cheap. It's cheap. It's amazing. And you can go out and get like legit ramen and it's even more amazing.
Like get some scallions and like boil an egg. It's good.
I can't trust.
The medium boiled egg is crucial.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
The poached egg in the ramen bowl of flash fried noodles.
Wait, you idiot. You know what ramen is. We ate it together at the bottom of like Sawada Coffee Bar in Chicago. What was that little place?
What ramen is, but I'm saying
how do you know it's not pasta? How do you know it's not pasta?
How do you describe it? It's noodles.
Absolutely astonishing. Yeah, you describe it as noodles, dummy.
The same thing.
Pasta?
It's the same thing. It's noodles.
Pasta is exclusive to Italian food. Pasta is
trash.
Absolutely different. This is ridiculous that we're having this conversation. Chelsea, you're the arbiter.
You can have fried rice as well.
At the ballpark?
At the ballpark. They also have barbecue and tacos, I believe.
All right, well, tacos are hand food. Like I get that.
That's a good ballpark. Walking around, yeah.
Comiskey, the White Sox Park, bacon on a stick. If you're gonna get something, that's what you get.
See,
that's new age.
I just everywhere I go, I just get French fries. That's my.
You should do that. You should do some type of rate like the Barstool guy does the pizza. You should do like ballpark French fries and just.
I should.
Rate them all and make it a little YouTube, Instagram thing. See, this is I'll help you produce it. By I mean Dan.
Well, those are the things that actually do really grow a person's brand, is the things that unify. Like everyone loves pizza. And Dave from Barstool Sports, whether you like him or hate him, he's got a pretty good like snark to him, right? Like, so I think he's kind of funny. Obviously, he does a lot of things that are offensive, like whatever. But the pizza thing was just like such a good, which I don't think he was trying to do anything. Everyone loves pizza, and he's like kind of funny about it. Everyone wants to know, like, is the pizza good? It's like such a great, funny bit that he ended up. I mean, it got so big for them. So
everyone hates my pizza choice.
What's your pizza choice?
It is pineapple and jalapeno.
Yeah, I hate that too. That sounds terrible.
So good. It's so good. Have a little hot sauce on it too.
I don't like the liquidiness because the pineapple gets like dehydrated a significant amount in the oven, but I still don't want to bite into my pizza and get like a sweet.
Oh, it's so good. Like
liquidy.
It's juice on it. Yeah.
No. You're on the bench. You're on the bench with that. No.
So good. Add a little chorizo.
So in the Midwest, and this is the thing, we talk about this with Rick Camp from who's like our food connoisseur for the show. we talked about pizza and the differences in between pizza. I grew up with New York style pizza in Maryland, and then we had a really great place in Maryland, which Maryland's not that close to New York. We're like 4 hours away, whatever. But obviously, like the whole Northeast, there's New York pizza has trickled down into the whole Mid Atlantic. So, but there was a legitimately great, still is, pizza place by my house, like one of those little greasy Italian places that just churns out phenomenal pizza. And like you could definitely stack it up against any of the real New York places. It's very, very good. And I just grew up just like with plain cheese pizza being just this amazing food. Like I personally don't need to add anything to it to be extremely happy with my pizza. So, but in the Midwest, it's really not that way. In the Midwest, it's a very like toppings are first. I feel like toppings are more default, and plain is not. Plain is like a variation. Whereas in the Mid Atlantic, plain cheese pizza is the default, and you can add stuff to it as a variation. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I think so. And I will take a plain cheese pizza any day. Any day.
But chorizo and
cheese.
pineapple.
Yeah, that sounds like a taco.
It's so good. Taco pizza is actually really good too.
You just described taco pizza.
Well, this is like a legit taco pizza. Like there's like lettuce and hamburger meat and tomatoes and cheese and black olives. Like it's so good.
We have to discredit your pizza sensibilities now.
Is it time to talk about Casey's Pizza? I feel like this is the time to talk about it.
The gas station pizza?
Yeah. Do you guys eat Casey's Pizza in
I've had
Kentucky?
Casey's Pizza.
We've had it.
It seems like neither of you guys are fans.
It's surprisingly good for a gas station.
Yeah. I mean, it wouldn't be my first option, but if it was my only option, I would eat it and enjoy it.
For those of you listening who don't understand what we're talking about, in the Midwest, I don't know how far Casey's General Store, which is like a decent gas station, I don't know how far they go, but they have Casey's Pizza, which is, I would say, kind of renowned, where people will call a Casey's gas station, order a pizza or two, and pick them up and bring them home as if it's a real pizza place. And I didn't have this until my last year. I mean, I'd had maybe like a slice, but my last year when we were kind of reminiscing before, selling the academy and doing all these things, kids were like, you've got to have it. So we finally like bought like a bunch of Casey's pizzas, and it was so weird still. It's like, this is a gas station. Why are we ordering pizza from a gas station? And they were still like $12 each. It's like you didn't get the this is junk pizza discount. And it was decent. It was decent.
$4.99.
Yeah, if it comes from a gas station, it needs to be at least 40% off what a normal pizza costs, but it's not. They have a great racket going on.
Right. It should be at least cheaper than Little Caesars.
100%. But it's not. It's like it's the same as anything else. They just have figured it out. I don't know. So if you're in the Midwest and you need pizza, there you go.
Chelsea, do you know, does Sheetz or Wawa make it down to Kentucky?
Nope.
Do you know what I'm talking about though?
I do.
So you have to choose which one you like better. It's a thing.
You're just trying to pit her against me.
I just wanted. I mean, there's
the likelihood she's had Wawa is much lower than the likelihood she's had Sheetz, because there's a lot of Sheetz in the Midwest.
Are there? I've never seen one.
Yeah, there's more. Like they start around Ohio.
I've never had either.
Okay.
Oh.
All right.
Okay. You need to do the food tour then. Of gas station. That sounds terrible. Gas station food tour.
Well, let's go into that. So what ballparks have you visited? Which ones are on your list? What's your favorite ballpark?
I've only been to Busch 2 and Busch Stadium as of right now, which is a travesty.
What is Busch 2?
It was the Busch Stadium before the one we have now.
Oh, okay.
It was the iconic, one that McGuire and Sosa were in. I actually got to go the last season. I got to actually go to one of the games when the current Busch Stadium was being built, and like you're going up Busch 2 and you can see this new stadium just looming, and it was very depressing. Like I wasn't very old, but I still understood how sad and depressing that was. I've been to, like, indie ball wise, I've been to Bossy and Rent One, and minor league wise, I've been to the Louisville Bats field, the like 2 years after it was built.
I didn't get to go to a game there, but it's an impressive field
Yeah.
from street level
It's
in Louisville.
Oh yeah, I love it. And my goal is to go to Wrigley, go to Comiskey, go to Comerica, and I want to go to City. I want to go to Yankee Stadium. Okay, I just want to go to all 30.
Well, that seems like every base. Yeah, that's what I figure you've been to more, so I don't mean to call you out on it, but you need to get to more ballparks. That's clear. That's evident.
I was going to go to Atlanta this year with my dad. I was going to take him down there when Austin was in town because
Is there a new ballpark built?
Mm-hmm.
The brand new one is built.
It's a few years old, I believe.
Oh, I thought they were
It's
playing
really,
another.
really nice.
It's so cool. Like,
Okay.
It doesn't even feel like, everybody that's been there says it's like, oh, it's like a whole village, like whole town, and then there's a ballpark in the middle of it.
Yeah, they really did a nice job. They've built up all around there. It's like an entertainment district. If you've ever been to, I think Philly does this with their football stadium, their basketball arena, and the baseball stadium all kind of share like a hub of entertainment, like restaurants, bars, it's like where people essentially tailgate, I guess, before games. That's what Atlanta did. It's really, really nice.
Yeah, I don't think Philly's as nice as what you guys are. I think I've seen the plans for SunTrust Field now that I think about it. I don't know why I'm so out of touch with it, but it seemed like they had actually like a cool like outdoor mall kind of thing what they were building in Atlanta. Whereas in Philly, it doesn't feel that way. There's definitely a bunch of bars right there for sure, but it doesn't feel like you're in it still feels like kind of an industrial area.
Yeah.
Whereas my guess is that's not how SunTrust feels.
Busch Stadium, we have Ballpark Village, which is really cool. It's where Fox Sports Midwest is actually located during the games. And when the Blues won, everyone was actually in Ballpark Village watching it on the big screen. That's actually where I got to meet Ozzie Smith in January. So there's a few bars, few restaurants. It's just a hangout for people to go before the game. It's very nice.
Yeah. Speaking of Ozzie Smith, he's another example of someone that people sometimes cry out and be like, oh, Ozzie Smith would never even play a major league game today. It's like, why are we talking about that?
Right.
Why are we talking about that? Like, what good does that do for the world?
Like, there's no point.
Ozzie Smith is so overrated. I can't even start.
This is why you don't get a video today.
I know. I can't get behind Ozzie Smith like being a good being elite Hall of Fame level baseball player. I can't do it.
Give reasons why.
Because so are we in agreement that the Hall of Fame is mainly an offensive award or offensive, I guess, acknowledgement?
I don't know enough to have an informed opinion. I don't know, Chelsea, what's your
kind of
like this guy hit like 250 with like no pop. I mean, he was essentially like a career sack bunter.
The Whitey Ball era got him good.
I just can't get behind. I know he was good defensively, but there's so many guys that are elite defensive players that never get their due, that never even become a stat.
We need to not conflate people that are good defensively with arguably one of the best ever to play shortstop, because that's what Ozzie Smith was.
But how many superstar defensive shortstops never got a chance to play every day because they couldn't hit? And whereas Ozzie Smith got that opportunity. I don't know. I mean, obviously I don't think that discounts his value though. He was on the field and he provided value. Yeah, but I mean, if we're going by WAR value, I feel like his has got to be so low that I'm right.
I don't know. Where do you fall on this, Chelsea?
I'm just going to say he's the nicest human being I've ever met.
Well, Bob, I just don't. There's a couple things. There's a couple things that you need to realize. Number one, they had almost no ability to track fielding ability like they do now. So if they had some of these high level fielding stats, they could actually it would probably prove that Ozzy was worth even more than they thought he was.
Yeah.
They had no ability to prove how good players were back then.
It could prove he was not as good as he was, but more flashy. Ooh, I like that.
I mean, that's just you doing your theory, your conspiracy thing. So Bobby, Chelsea, if you don't not aware of this, he's a big conspiracy theorist, and he loves introducing nonsense into his life, just taking stances on things that don't make any sense. And he just go, well, maybe it is, maybe it wasn't, and he just tries to that's his argument for. Was Hank Aaron the all-time home run leader? Maybe he wasn't.
Maybe
that's
it was
what Bob does. That's what Bob does.
It's
no, he was. It's no, he was. He was. Objectively, the number of home runs he hit was, the most. But was it?
Maybe he, lived in the Mandela effect. So he witnessed something else that we didn't.
Whoa. Oh. You're hitting a home run right here. The Mandela effect. All right, we have to have a whole other podcast now on just straight conspiracy stuff, because that's like a next level thought process on what's your favorite conspiracy? I guess that's my next hard hitting question. Is it aliens? Is it God, there's so many. What do you got?
Probably aliens, because they terrify me. They terrify me.
Because they're real, and they probably walk amongst you in Kentucky.
I mean, it's possible. And I'm a big X-Files fan, so show used to terrify me as a kid, but as an adult, I actually enjoy it. And some of it's oh, well, this is hitting hard in today's times, the 90s.
Well, X-Files is obviously based on true events. David Duke, and I'm a big David Duchovny fan, so you're back on. Dan's dropped down to third on this podcast.
I'm currently researching Ozzie Smith articles, and there are many other articles with Bob's point of view that Ozzie Smith does not deserve to be in the Hall of Fame. I don't know enough to have an informed opinion, really, but
just based on offensive numbers, I feel like there's guys that either exceed or match his offensive numbers that played shortstop at a high level, and there's other
again, you got to not say high level. That's too vague. I mean, these are major leaguers, and back then, one stat that people are sharing is that he fielded 976 at a time when the average shortstop fielded 965, which is a pretty significant amount of just purely making the plays that you get to. And of course, none of that, fielding percentage does not measure balls that you get to that, so if I played shortstop and Bobby Stevens plays shortstop, Bobby is going to have 30% more chances because he's going to glove a ball in the hole that I'm too slow to get to. And he's going to make plays that I couldn't make. So I'm sure people have looked back at how many chances he got compared to the average shortstop, and there's probably way more because he's getting to more balls that they just don't even touch. So if you don't touch a ball in the hole, if I don't touch that ball in the hole, it doesn't go down as an error. Whereas you make that play, it goes down as an assist.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm sure somebody has done the breakdown a lot more than me just saying Ozzie Smith is a Hall of Famer. But
it seems like you've done the same amount of work on this as you have with your vaccines theory, essentially,
Oh, I know way more about vaccines,
but essentially nothing compared to anyone in medical. But okay, I digress.
I know false.
Bobby doesn't believe in medicine, by the way. He does believe in Santa, doesn't believe in medicine, doesn't believe in Ozzie Smith.
I'm sorry. Who's denying Santa Claus?
Does believe in Donald Trump. But anyway, so where were we, Bob?
Jim Edmonds is a Hall of Famer. That's where I was heading.
Yeah.
Jim Edmonds is phenomenal, and there was a big scare with him. He got coronavirus pretty early and went to the hospital.
He did.
And at And at that point, I felt like it was too early to say Jim Edmonds can catch anything.
there's no way coronavirus takes out Jim Edmonds. I mean, let's get real.
That's not how he goes out. There's no way.
No, he goes out in some petty misdemeanor offense and he gets locked up. He's definitely gets locked up.
What are you talking about right now? How did this transition into
Jim Edmonds?
No, I
Jim
don't.
Edmonds is great. You gotta look. Jim Edmonds is great. Great follow.
He's hilarious.
He is a very funny guy.
He's very entertaining.
Well, I was watching a replay on Periscope. I think of the Braves, which was my team in the mid 90s. I don't have a team now, but I was a Braves fan as a kid because they just had such amazing players. It was so fun to watch. It wasn't like a bandwagon thing for me, which maybe it was. Like all kids kind of bandwagon, but like you're just in awe of everyone in their lineup. Andrew Jones, Brian Jordan. I mean, you had Deion Sanders, you had Gary Sheffield, you had Chipper Jones playing third, Javi Lopez behind the plate, their pitching staff. I mean, it was Rafael Furcal throwing 99 across the diamond at a time when that wasn't normal. Like their whole team was amazing. Yeah, it was so fun to watch.
Until my dad let me choose my team, and I chose the Dodgers because they had the same color scheme as my softball team. And I was like, oh. And I fell in love with Mike Piazza. He was traded a month later to the Marlins and then traded to the Mets. And so that started my long whirlwind relationship with the Mets.
How'd that work out? How'd that work out for you? Ponzi schemes and mediocre management.
All I feel is pain.
Well, then you actually were a Mets fan, so there you go.
They had those glory years. What was it, like 01?
Yeah.
02?
They were decent. Like the Piazza years were good, but I feel like it's just we go in circles. We'll be good, and then we'll, be the Mets. They really Mets themselves most of the time.
Well, I have a strange Mets story. It was so weird. So maybe like 2014, I think it was the year you and I played together, Bob. A girl I was dating flew out to see me during the season, and she was only gonna be there for like 2 days. So we got a hotel in Center City in Philadelphia, and we go out to dinner. We're coming back. This is one of those hotels where the ground floor, you couldn't, like there was nothing. You had to take an elevator to the lobby on the second floor. It kind of like, I guess, like a little security screening. So we get in the elevator and we see this woman who's like, she's just this gorgeous, like you don't see women like her in real life, just like 6 foot tall. It's like, you look really important. Like you're a runway model or something. And then Curtis Granderson walks into our elevator. I'm like, I feel like I recognize you. And then we go up, and then I see my teammate's dad in the lobby. And my teammate was Sean Tuffle, and his dad, Tim Tuffle, was a long time in the Mets. He was on the Miracle Mets. He was the third base coach for the Mets at the time. And I'm like, Tim, I just saw your son last night. He's one of my close friends. It was funny because I had talked to him. I'm like, you're Tim Tuffle, aren't you? And he's like, being the guarded thing, and I'm just like trying to get his autograph. And I'm like, I play with your son. He's a really cool kid. Like we're buddies. We're in the bullpen together. He's like, it was super random, but we were in the Mets team hotel. So like on the second floor lobby, it was like the whole Mets team just drinking in the lobby. It's really, really bizarre. Strange coincidence. But that's my Mets Tim Tuffle story. So if you want to know where the Mets stay in Philadelphia, they stay at the Westin in Rittenhouse Square. So yeah, there you go. But
they all do, right?
Probably that's probably the team hotel. Yeah.
Yeah, my buddy that was played with the Nats, and drove down to meet him after a game, and it's like, just meet us at this hotel, sit in the lobby, and then it's like, the flood of players comes in, little extra security, they wonder who you are.
Yeah, but not that much security. Like if I was a fan, I could have stayed there and just hung out and drank with the manager. It's crazy. It was like kind of weird.
Lineup.
That was that
Give
easy.
Your lineup suggestions.
Yeah, and listen, man. First to third in that situation, you got to hold him up. Like, come on.
Bring in the lefty. Are you crazy?
So Chelsea, let's talk about what is it like being a female baseball writer?
It's interesting. I receive a lot of hot takes from men who kind of discount my credibility and my knowledge and love for the game. But it hasn't been too bad. I've only had a few do things, like when I mentioned the DH, that guys with glasses and their Avies, they came for me that night.
In their Avies, what is that? What is that term?
Profile pictures, that group of guys that like the reply guys, and they have the sunglasses, and they like, no matter what you say, they're like, no, this is what's happening. So that was fun. Yeah.
So what was your take on the DH before we get back to that?
I am okay with it. I'm like, if you're going to do it, let's do it. It's been in theory since 1906. Connie Mack and a few other guys, they were like wanting to do it. They were disappointed in the way pitchers were batting. Of course, it didn't come in until like the 70s, but it's always been a part of baseball. It's always been there. And so someone actually told me, they were like, oh, it'll ruin the way the game's meant to be played. And I'm like, it's been a part of baseball since the dead ball era. It just wasn't, enforced for the longest time. So, and my theory is there's nothing worse than, 2 outs, bases loaded, or a guy in scoring position and your pitcher is up. There's nothing worse. And I say that as a former pitcher who could not hit a ball off of a tee most days.
Well, are you familiar with Tom Tango?
I am.
And Michael Lickman? Have you read their book called The Book?
I haven't, but I really want to.
Yeah, it was one of I liked it because it's dense but not too dense. Like, they do a good job of summarizing at the end of each chapter and kind of giving you like the important takeaways. Because I'm not a stats person. Like, a lot of these people are more and more stats heavy than ever, which is great and fine. But I think they do a reasonable job finding a balance. But one of the interesting things they talk about in that book is the value or the lack of value that the pitcher hitting has. And they basically said that with the average pitcher hitting in the NL, if you were to DH for him every time he comes up, the increase in value you'd get from having a real hitter replace him is the equivalent of adding a Randy Johnson to your starting rotation. You get that much value from getting the darn pitcher out of there. A Randy Johnson. It's like adding another Randy Johnson to your starting rotation just by pinch hitting for the pitcher. Just crazy.
It's insane. And I feel like a lot of people don't take the time to actually, sit and think about it. Like, the argument is, oh, well, it's going to ruin the game, or, oh, I don't want to, I miss Bartolo Colon. We're never going to see that happen ever again. And it's like, okay.
Which that is wonderful. That is objectively wonderful.
That was amazing. But how many times is that, how many times are we going to actually get that?
Yeah.
We're not.
It is a stupid thing. And as a pitcher, it's weird throwing against another pitcher. Because you're like, this feels dumb. Like, I have nothing to gain. It's probably going to be an out. Sometimes they're going to embarrass me, but it's a weird thing. And because I played in one indie ball league. Are you familiar with the North American League? It existed for half a summer. It was a joke. They did National League rules for some reason. So I get to hit. I'm like, why am I hitting? And then I was pitching against other pitchers. I'm like, why are we doing this? This makes no sense. Bob, I'm getting some reverb, by the way. There you go. That's right, Bobby.
Well, I was going to jump in and say that's great for your stats. It's great for your stats pitching against.
It's still dumb. It's like a non-competitive at bat. Like, as a competitor out there, it's nice to get a free out, but it feels kind of stupid to get a free out. Honestly, you're like, why are we doing this?
It's fun.
So, it's fun. It's not. But it isn't though. It's not though. Like, when you're at that level, you don't want to have a mental lull where you're like, all right, the pitcher's up. Just throw fastballs. Just don't walk him, right? It like takes you out of it in a kind of, because again, like Bob, and we've had this talk before, when you retire for good, the thing you miss most is competing. You don't miss getting free outs at the bottom of the lineup. You miss competing. And that's why even when the free out was good for me, it would give me more time, help my numbers be better. And like, keep the Grim Reaper away, it still felt stupid because it wasn't competing. It's, every ninth time up, it makes no sense. So yeah, I agree. I think it's fine. I don't think people have a really good argument for why we should keep it. It's just nostalgia or something.
Even my mom, like, of course, she watches baseball closely because of me and my dad, but she doesn't. She understands it, but there are things she's like, now wait a minute, what's the point in this? And from the time, even when I was little, like from the time she started watching baseball with my dad until now, she's like, why are the pitchers batting? This is ridiculous. And so she always loves when like we watch an American League game between two teams, because she's like, see, this makes sense. This is smart. And of course, when we go to indie games, she's like, see, they do it. Why can't why can't the Cardinals do that? I'm like, well, listen, this is what's happening. This is what's trying to happen.
Mm-hmm. And like adult league, like men's league baseball, pitchers hitting is great. Like I could hit a dinger. Like I could hit 75 miles per hour. Like I don't look any more embarrassing. I'm clearly wouldn't be better than the guys who used to be college position players, but I could hold my own in a men's league. But in pro ball, you just can't. You can't be prepared enough to hit 92 with a slider. You just can't. You look stupid. So yeah, it doesn't make sense. Because like every player has a certain level of preparation that they have to maintain to be at their best. And then you have a pitcher who doesn't have any of that level of preparation for that task. Yeah. Like nowhere else on the field does someone go up completely unprepared. It's like asking the catcher to pitch an inning every fifth game. It's like, why would we do that?
I remember very vividly last year, Dan Winkler was pitching for the Braves. And for some reason, of course, he was a relief, but for some reason he was batting. And he went to bunt, and when he did, he actually made contact, but his eyes were closed, and like the face he made, I had it on MLB TV, and like the amount of times I like went back and watched that like in slow-mo, I don't even remember how many times I did, but I even like yelled for my dad. I was like, oh my God, come here, look at your team, look at this. And he was like, I don't know that team right now. I don't know. Like it was so bad. And he made it to first, but I think even Fox Sports replayed it like 10 times because it was just so god awful.
Well, and that's how it is. When I was in that league, I remember my first at bat since like high school. And I actually got a hit because I just like swung on the first pitch. I hit off the pitcher's leg. My second at bat, I had to bunt. And I was like shocked at how hard the ball hit the bat. Like bunting seems like it seems really easy on TV. In reality, that ball's going fast and it hits your bat hard and it like bounces back, and it's that. So I can completely relate to him closing his eyes, especially if it was like 96. It's like, oh God, don't hit me in the face. Like, yeah, it's a very real thing. Bunting looks easy on TV. It's not.
I was going against girls who were I was throwing 70. So like they were throwing in the 60s and 70s, and I actually almost broke my finger on a bunt. Like I also got a home run off of a bunt, but that was because it was a little league home run. So we won't, I can't use that as street cred.
Asterisk. Yeah, I'm not going to get you into the Hall of Fame.
No, I tried.
You can use it. You can use it. We don't have those rules here.
So let's go back to the women in baseball thing a little more. So how do you respond to men that just want to like shoo you away and mansplain or whatever?
Sometimes I just let it go. Sometimes it's not worth it. Sometimes when I'm feeling feisty and my personality wants to actually come out on social media, I'll go back and reply with something. And of course, I'll wait and I'll do my research, because sometimes I'll wait, well, this isn't true, but to make sure I have to go back. Otherwise, it's been really great because there are a lot of women in baseball, and I've met so many wonderful women because of this. I've had a chance to interview Jessica Kleinschmidt and Emily Walden, two women I look up to. They've both told me, Jessica told me, you have to be yourself. You can't, turn into someone else. And Emily gave me great advice. She said that it shouldn't matter if I'm a woman or a man. It should matter on how much work and how much I put into this. to show I do want this. So I take both of those and I run with it. I'm the only girl on my radio show. It's me and two guys, and I joke that they couldn't do it without me. But I'm also one of the only female sports writers in my town, so it's often where I have to, take a step and think, hey, you're doing this. It, like Emily said, it doesn't matter if you're a girl, a guy. What matters is the work, your effort, and proving that you can do this. So there are days when I'm like, oh my God, but then there are also days that feel very rewarding, and I get to do stuff like this, so it's really cool. It's still overwhelming sometimes. I'm like,
yay baseball.
People want to talk to me about baseball. Like this time last year, people were like, Chelsea, please stop talking about baseball. Like,
you do tweet about baseball a lot. I tweet about baseball very little. But since we all recently followed each other, you do tweet about baseball a lot. You apparently miss it a lot. So
I do miss it.
So we hit indie ball a little bit. What do you think is going to happen with indie ball? What do you think is going to happen with the minor leagues? What do you think is going to happen? What are your predictions? Because I think Bob's got to get to his game, coach the next generation in about five-ish minutes. So what are your predictions going forward?
I think with everything going on in minor league baseball, indie ball is going to grow. I actually talked to the commissioner of the American Association 2 days ago. Wow, it's been 2 days. And he even said that the way we look at indie ball is fixing to change because, of course, with all the cuts and minor league teams being on the chopping block, the level of talent's going to grow in independent leagues. And it's not just going to be guys who were rookie level. It's going to be guys in AA, AAA that are affected by this and ultimately will end up playing for an indie league that were cut, and they don't want to give it up yet. They want to try to get back where they were. So I think the downfall of minor league baseball and everything going on behind it will give independent ball more credibility. People, I think, eventually will look at indie ball as, hey, they are professional, more leagues are professional baseball leagues. And I don't want to see minor league baseball go through what it's fixing to go through and what it's been going through this year. But I do think that independent ball will definitely have a bigger following in the coming years. So I'm trying to get as many people as I can to jump on the indie ball train right now so they, aren't looked at like, bandwagoners.
Gotcha. Do you think people would seek out independent baseball, or is it still just a regional thing? Like if you live in Southern Illinois, you're probably already somewhat familiar. Like you could go to the Gateway Grizzlies in the Frontier League. You could go to the, what's the other one? There's another one I thought. There's
the Miners, and then there's Schaumburg and there was the River City Rascals. They're no longer.
That's the one I was thinking of. Yeah. Because Schaumburg's up by Chicago.
Mm-hmm. And then Wendy's Thunderbolts in Chicago.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, but if there's a choice, like I guess, where I used to live in Normal, Illinois, there was the Corn Belters. They're now defunct. They're a college team now. And there was Peoria, which were the Peoria Chiefs. They were the Cubs. Mm-hmm. Now they're Cardinals. Yeah. So do you think people would choose independent ball over an affiliated team if it was a similar drive?
I'm not sure. I want to say I think it'll be 50-50. I think there will be some people who want to go and see the indie games, and then people want to see the minor league games. I know, especially when I'm at the Southern Illinois Miners games, they have the feel of a AA or a AAA game, just the way they set everything up. It's, in between innings, the kids get to do things, and that's the way it is in minor leagues. So ultimately, I think it would just be the difference in them, wanting to go to whichever team they want to see more.
Yeah. Bob, what do you think about the talent level in indie ball increasing?
I think it'll be good. I don't necessarily think it matters. I I mean, you're really not going to indie ball games. Parents aren't bringing their kids to indie ball games to see so-and-so unless they know the player personally, or it's more for the entertainment value. I think it'll help the game. I think the biggest thing with indie ball right now is if it's the only thing going, you're going to draw people that maybe had never been to a game. You're going to reach a bigger group of people, like especially in Chicago. So I help with the dogs. Chicago Dogs are new. We have Schaumburg. We have like you said, Windy City Thunderbolts. Like there's a plethora of options.
Gary's on the Indiana side right there. Mm-hmm.
Right. So you're talking 6 professional teams, the Cubs and the White Sox, within an hour's drive of each other. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of options. And I think just, you're never going to replace the Cubs or the White Sox, but if they're not playing and you can draw people that you wouldn't normally draw, and all of a sudden they get a good experience, and now it's at least in the back of the mind of, hey, we want to go to a baseball game, or who's in town. Let's see if there's a game going on. There's an opportunity to find new fans that may have just, poo-pooed the, something less than the White Sox or the Cubs. So, I mean, the White Sox have a hard enough time drawing fans as a big league team in Chicago. So you can only imagine how hard it is for, new startup independent teams. But, new talent will help. I don't know if it necessarily makes a difference to the team, other than maybe trying to win a championship, because those faces change every year. I mean, the rosters turn over 80% every year, it feels like.
Yeah, it's got to be the experience, not the players. For sure.
It's definitely the experience. And if you're going to reach, a fraction of the population in a normal year, maybe you can reach a little bit more this year and kind of open yourself up into some new fans that didn't even know you existed, or that just need some outlet to get out of the house and have a good time.
Well, there is a percentage of fans that do want to be impressed by what happens on the field. And I've definitely heard, like with normal, that's the Frontier League, and the Frontier League can be pretty sloppy at times. Like you can go to a game and see 5 errors sometimes, because like the Frontier League is the most transitional league, where the lower teams on it, like again, you can get guys that really weren't pro ball players and they're just going to go out there and not perform. Whereas the American Association, much higher level of play, the Atlantic League is not that like that at all. You have seasoned veteran guys out there. So I think cleaning up some of that, where if maybe it's your first time going to like a Frontier League game and you're kind of impressed, like wowed by some of the stuff the guys can do on the field, I think that definitely helps versus, again, some of the times when you can just go to a Frontier League game and it's just like a kind of ugly game, which that can happen in single A ball too, or rookie ball. Like you go to those games, you're like, what are these guys doing? Just throwing it around the field. Cause it's still.
It can happen at a Mets game. Let's be real.
Yeah. Yeah. Can and does regularly happen in Mets games. Well, Chelsea, how can people, thanks for coming on the show. It was a really fun conversation. We'll have to have you back on. How can people follow up with you, and where can they find you on the web?
You can find me on Twitter at Chelsea Brook and at Dugout Dish. My website is dugoutdish.com, and my words can be found on prospectslive.com and pitcherlist.com. And my podcast is Player to Be Named Later. I ramble about
we didn't even talk about your podcast. Dang it.
It's next time. We'll talk about it next time when I finally have my microphone. And it's on Apple, Spotify, and SoundCloud.
Awesome. Very cool. We'll definitely be sure to check out Chelsea. She does a great job on social media. She writes a lot of really interesting stuff. I was on her Dugout Dish website the other day. So definitely go support her. Thank you again for being on the show. Bobby, you want to send us off? You still there?
Chelsea, I'm still here. I'll turn the video on so everyone can see me. I'm ready to go. Chelsea, this was awesome. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for
we'll see everybody Tuesday.
Do we have a guest?
We will have a guest to be determined. We've got a few options, and I won't be driving, so you get to see this mug for the full hour and a half.
No more B Squad Bobby on Tuesday.
Hey,
so
B Squad Bobby's better than no Bobby.
Debatable, but all right. Thanks for listening. We'll